The translation matrix flickered as Rachel Hayes adjusted her collar one last time. Around her, the council chamber stretched like a massive amphitheater carved from crystalline stone that seemed to pulse with its own inner light. 47 species had sent their representatives, each sitting in specially designed pods that accommodated their unique biology. Some breathed methane, others required crushing gravity fields, and a few existed partially in dimensions Rachel's eyes couldn't quite focus on. She looked at Colonel Davis Reed beside her. The military advisor's face showed nothing, but Rachel knew him well enough to see the tension in his jaw. They had spent 3 months at these negotiations, and every day had felt like watching a slow-motion collision. "The human delegation will now respond to our proposal," Counselor Prith announced. Her chitinous plates rattled with what Rachel had learned was satisfaction. The Vreen representative had pushed hardest for what they called integration protocols. Rachel called it something else entirely. The proposal glowed in the air before her, translated into crisp English. Humanity would surrender autonomous military command. Human colonies would accept council administrators. Human ships would submit to inspection at any council checkpoint. Human medical patents would become shared property. Human expansion into new systems would require council approval. In exchange, humanity would retain its seat at this table. Rachel stood slowly. The chamber quieted. Beings who communicated through chemical signals, electromagnetic pulses, and gravitational waves all focused on the human ambassador. "Thank you, Counselor Prith," Rachel said, her voice steady. "We appreciate the time and effort the Council has invested in drafting this proposal." Prith's mandibles clicked. "Then humanity accepts." "We respectfully decline." The chamber erupted, not in sound exactly, but in a cascade of reactions that the translation matrix struggled to convey. Shock radiated from the aquatic Telly's delegation. The crystalline shard observers vibrated at frequencies that made Rachel's teeth ache. The Dravik warriors rose from their seats, confusion evident even across species barriers. "This is unacceptable," Prith said, her voice sharp. "You cannot simply refuse council integration. Every species must contribute to our collective security." "Every species must maintain its sovereignty," Rachel replied. "We've contributed plenty. Our medical technology has saved billions across council space. Our gravitational plating systems are in 70% of your stations. Our people have rescued crews from disasters in 16 different systems. We've asked for nothing except to govern ourselves." "You ask for special treatment," another counselor interjected. This one was Dravik, his scaled face twisted in what Rachel thought might be anger. "You claim rights beyond what others receive." Davis leaned close, whispering, "They're not going to back down." Rachel nodded slightly. She had known this moment would come, had prepared for it, had hoped against it. But the council had made its position clear. Submit or be isolated. Accept oversight or face consequences. "We request 48 hours to consult with our government," Rachel said. "Denied," Prith responded immediately. "Too many delays already. Humanity answers now or faces immediate economic sanctions." The threat hung in the air. Rachel felt something shift inside her, a decision crystallizing. She thought of the reports she had read, the intelligence briefings, the careful analysis her team had prepared. The council believed humanity needed them more than they needed humanity. They were about to learn otherwise. "In that case," Rachel said, gathering her data tablets, "I thank the council for its hospitality over these past months. Colonel Reed and I will be departing Meridian 7 within the hour." "You walk away from these negotiations," Prith's voice carried disbelief. "You abandon your council seat." "We're not abandoning anything," Rachel said. "We're choosing not to accept terms that would effectively end human independence. If the council cannot accept humanity as an equal partner, then we have no place here." Davis was already moving, collecting their materials with practiced efficiency. Rachel saw the Quinn observer in the back of the chamber, an ancient being who rarely spoke, watching with what might have been approval, or possibly sadness. Reading Quinn expressions was like reading smoke. "You'll return," Prith said confidently. "Within days, you'll see reason. Humanity cannot survive outside council protection and trade networks." Rachel paused at the chamber door. "We survived long before we met you, counselor. We'll manage." The walk to their shuttle felt longer than it should have. Rachel kept her pace measured, her expression calm. Davis matched her stride for stride. Behind them, the council chamber buzzed with excited conversation. She could imagine what they were saying. The humans were bluffing. They would be back tomorrow, apologizing, accepting whatever terms were offered. The shuttle Aurora waited in its docking bay, sleek and efficient. Rachel nodded to the pilot, a young woman named Amy Park who had flown them faithfully through 3 months of negotiations. "We're going home?" Amy asked. "We're going home," Rachel confirmed. As the shuttle detached from Meridian 7, Rachel looked back at the massive station. Thousands of beings lived there, working in the bureaucratic heart of galactic civilization. They thought they were indispensable. They thought everyone else needed them to maintain order, facilitate trade, ensure peace. They had forgotten a simple truth. Power isn't about who makes the rules. It's about who people can't afford to lose. Davis pulled up a communication screen. "Director Williams is waiting for your signal." Rachel took a breath. "Send it. Begin protocol separation." The message went out on encrypted human channels, racing ahead of Aurora at faster-than-light speeds. Across human space, colony governors and ship captains would receive the same simple instruction. Cease all council priority communications. Redirect trade through independent channels. Activate defensive protocols. Humanity was leaving the table. Now the galaxy would learn what that really meant. 3 days had passed since the human shuttle departed Meridian 7, and Counselor Prith was beginning to feel the first whispers of doubt. Not publicly, of course. In the council chambers, she maintained her confident posture, her mandibles clicking with satisfaction as she addressed her colleagues. "The humans will return before week's end," she declared. "Their economy depends on council trade routes. Their colonies need our protection from pirates. They have no choice." But in her private quarters, Prith reviewed reports that troubled her more with each passing hour. Human cargo ships had stopped arriving at council trade hubs. Vessels that had been scheduled to dock at Nexus Station had simply changed course, their transponders showing new destinations in independent space. The flow of human goods, so constant for 8 decades, had become a trickle. Her communication console chimed. A priority message from the trade minister, a fellow Vreen named Salk. "Counselor, we have a problem." Salk's voice carried urgency. "Human colonies are not responding to standard council frequencies. They've switched to encrypted channels." "Force them to respond," Prith said. "Send official demands." "We tried. They sent back a single message from someone named James Wu. He says, and I quote, 'Humanity respectfully declines council membership. We wish you well.' That's all." Prith felt her thorax tighten. This wasn't negotiation. This was severance, clean, complete, final. "Organize an emergency council session," she ordered. "Tomorrow morning." The session convened with unprecedented attendance. Every major species sent their primary representatives, and the chamber crackled with tension that the translation matrix struggled to convey properly. "The human withdrawal is temporary posturing," Prith announced. "We will demonstrate the consequences of their decision through targeted economic measures. I propose immediate sanctions against any species that continues exclusive trade with human colonies." The Dravic representative, a warrior named Grek, slammed his fist on his pod's console. "Agreed. Show strength. Humans respect only power." The vote carried easily. Prith felt vindicated as the sanctions were broadcast across council space. By evening, 12 species had officially ceased direct human trade to comply with Council demands. By morning, those same 12 species had filed economic distress notices. Prith read the reports with growing alarm. The Vaxis Commerce Guild reported their shipping lanes were already showing profit losses. The Marin Medical Collective had sent an urgent message about supply shortages. The Telly's aquatic farms were requesting emergency aid because their water purification systems, all human-designed, needed replacement filters that were no longer arriving. This is temporary, she told herself. Supply chain disruption, it will stabilize. It did not stabilize. 10 days after the sanctions began, Prith sat in her office reviewing economic projections that made her compound eyes ache. The numbers were devastating. Humans controlled 40% of rare element extraction in known space, not through monopoly but through superior mining technology. Their medical supplies reached 60% of Council hospitals. Their gravitational plating systems ran in nearly every major station. And all of it was simply disappearing from Council markets. But the reports showed something worse. Human trade hadn't stopped. It had redirected. Independent stations were reporting unprecedented economic growth. Unaligned species were forming new trade partnerships with human colonies. An entire parallel economy was emerging, and humans sat at its center. A message arrived from the Quinn Observer, the ancient being who rarely involved himself in council politics. Prith opened it reluctantly. You sanction those who feed half the galaxy, the message read. You punish the hand that heals your sick and builds your stations. This is not strategy. This is suicide. Reconsider while you still can. Prith deleted the message angrily. The Quinn were old and cautious, always warning against action. But she had spent years building political capital on the promise of bringing humanity to heel, of proving that no species could stand apart from council authority. Her console chimed again. The Dravik delegation requested emergency consultation. When Grek's face appeared on the screen, his usual warrior's confidence had evaporated. Our fleet maintenance is failing, he said bluntly. 60% of our ships use human composite alloys in their hull plating. We have 6 months of reserves, maybe 8 if we ration. After that, our entire navy grounds. Find alternative suppliers, Prith said. We tried. The alternatives are inferior and cost 4 times as much. Our military budget cannot sustain it. Another call came through, this one from Councillor Yenna, the Telly's representative. Her aquatic form shimmered with distress. My homeworld is facing a crisis, Yenna said without preamble. Our water purification systems use human nanite filters. We have enough for 3 months. After that, 16 billion Tellys will be drinking contaminated water. I need you to end these sanctions immediately. The sanctions are necessary to maintain council authority, Prith replied, but she could hear the weakness in her own voice. Authority, Yenna's translator conveyed bitter anger. What good is authority when my people are dying? The humans didn't force us to use their technology. We chose it because it was the best. Now you've cut us off from our own survival. The calls continued throughout the day. Mining colonies reporting equipment failures. Agricultural worlds facing crop disasters without human pesticides. Research stations unable to replace broken instruments. Hospital ships running low on surgical supplies. And through it all, not a single word from humanity. No demands, no threats, no gloating. They had simply turned away and left the council to face the consequences of its own choices. Prith sat alone in her office as Meridian 7's artificial night cycle began. The station's lights dimmed, and she could see the stars beyond the viewport. Somewhere out there, human colonies thrived. Human ships traded with grateful partners. Human doctors saved lives, and human engineers built wonders. And the council, which had thought itself indispensable, was learning a painful lesson about who truly held the power in their alliance. 2 weeks had become a month, and the council chamber felt different now. Where confidence had once filled the crystalline space, uncertainty hung thick as fog. Representatives who had voted enthusiastically for sanctions now shifted uncomfortably in their specialized pods, avoiding eye contact with their neighbors. Prith watched as the economic minister, a mathematical being called a shard, displayed projections in glowing three-dimensional graphs that rotated slowly above the chamber floor. Council-aligned space is entering what we classify as severe economic contraction, the shard announced, its voice like wind chimes. 14 major trade routes show 40% reduction in cargo volume. Medical supply chains are operating at 53% capacity. Industrial production has declined by 28% across the board. And human trade, someone asked from the back. Human trade has increased by 32%, the shard replied, but none of it flows through council space anymore. Prith stood, forcing her voice to remain steady. This proves humans are hoarding resources. They're intentionally punishing us. Incorrect, the shard said, immune to political pressure. Analysis shows humans are trading at previous volumes, simply with different partners. They have formed partnerships with 117 independent systems, 43 unaligned species, and 12 former council client states who have withdrawn their membership to join the human trade network. The chamber erupted in noise. Species who communicated through subsonic rumbles, electromagnetic pulses, and color-changing skin all expressed the same emotion: fear. Counselor Yenna rose from her water-filled pod, her translucent form shimmering. My people are suffering. Hospital ships wait in orbit around my homeworld, unable to land because we cannot guarantee clean water for their patients. The human nanite filters were not luxury items. They were survival technology. We are exploring alternatives, Prith said. There are no alternatives. Yenna's usually calm voice cracked. Do you understand? Human water purification is 30 generations ahead of anything else in known space. We cannot simply replace it. We either get human technology or my people die. It's that simple. Grek stood, his massive frame towering over the console. The Dravik fleet requires human composite alloys. We have researched every known alternative. None match human specifications. Our warships, which protect Council space, will be grounded within 5 months. Then we force the humans to resume trade, Prith said desperately. We send a military expedition. We blockade their colonies until they comply. The Quinn observer, silent for weeks, finally spoke. His voice was ancient, patient, and utterly without mercy. You wish to threaten those who build your stations, heal your sick, and feed your children. The Quinn's form seemed to expand, filling the chamber with presence rather than size. You have learned nothing. The humans are just one species, Prith protested. We are 47. We have the numbers, the resources, the authority. You have numbers, the Quinn agreed. The humans have competence. There is a difference. An intelligence report appeared on Prith's private screen, marked urgent. She read it quickly, then read it again, certain she had misunderstood. Counselor, her aide's voice was quiet, you should address this. Prith looked up at the chamber. I have received reports that several council species have begun unofficial contact with human colonies. Is this true? Silence. Then slowly, a small reptilian being from the Scath delegation stood. My homeworld has petitioned the human colony on Meridian 4 for medical assistance, the Scath representative said. We have a plague spreading through our southern continent. Human doctors offered to help. They asked for no political concessions, no trade agreements. They simply offered to help because people were dying. You violated council sanctions, Prith said. I saved 3 million lives, the Scath replied. If that violates your sanctions, then your sanctions are worthless. More representatives stood, confessions spilling out like water from a breaking dam. The Marin had quietly purchased human agricultural supplies. The Feln had contracted human engineers to repair their orbital habitats. The Tellies had begged human colony ships for water filters and received them freely, along with technicians who taught them maintenance procedures. And in every case, humans had asked for nothing in return except simple courtesy. "They're buying loyalty," Prith said, but she could hear how weak it sounded. "No," Yenna said. "They're demonstrating what you failed to understand. The humans never needed us. We needed them. Their medicine, their technology, their expertise. For 80 years, they shared freely while asking only to be left alone, and we responded by demanding they submit to our authority." The Dravik representative pulled up a tactical display. "I have intelligence regarding human military capabilities that the Council should review." The display showed Haven, a human colony world that had been targeted as a potential pressure point. But the scan revealed something that made Prith's thorax go cold. 17 defensive platforms surrounded the planet, each one powerful enough to destroy a battle fleet, and according to the timestamp, they had been there for decades. "The humans have been building defensive networks throughout their space for 40 years, Grek said quietly. "We never noticed because we never bothered to look closely. They prepared for this possibility long before we ever issued our demands." "They knew," Prith whispered. "They knew we would eventually try to control them." "Of course they knew," the Queen said. "Humanity has a saying, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. They hoped for partnership. They prepared for betrayal. You gave them betrayal, and now you face the consequences of their preparation." The economic projections updated, showing new data. Council space was hemorrhaging resources, losing trade partners, watching its influence collapse. Meanwhile, human-aligned space grew stronger each day, attracting new partners who valued cooperation over submission. Prith sat down slowly, defeat settling over her like a heavy cloak. She had wanted to prove Council authority, to show that no species could stand apart from galactic governance. Instead, she had proved that humanity was the foundation upon which the Council had been built, and removing that foundation meant everything else would crumble. The Council fractured like glass under pressure, cracks spreading from a single point of failure outward through the entire structure. In the 5 weeks since humanity's departure, 3 species had formally withdrawn from Council membership. 7 more were openly debating it, and Prith found herself leading a government that was rapidly losing the confidence of its own people. "We must act decisively," she told the hardliner faction that gathered in her private chambers. "Show strength, demonstrate consequences." Grek nodded, his warrior instincts overriding the economic warnings his own analysts had provided. "A military demonstration. We select one human colony, impose a blockade, force them to negotiate." "Haven," suggested another counselor, a crystalline shard whose mathematical mind saw only equations, not consequences. "Their agricultural output is significant. A blockade would pressure their food distribution network." Prith authorized the operation, desperate for anything that might shift the narrative back in her favor. The battle fleet departed Meridian 7 with great ceremony, broadcast across Council space as proof that the Council still wielded power. It took the fleet 4 days to reach Haven. Prith watched the tactical feed from her office, surrounded by military advisors who assured her this was a simple operation. One colony world, minimal defenses, quick capitulation. The fleet commander, a Dravik admiral named Court, initiated contact with the planet below. His message was formal, precise, threatening. "This is Admiral Court of the Council Enforcement Fleet. The colony world designated Haven is hereby under economic blockade pending resumption of full Council trade compliance. All orbital traffic is suspended. Surrender your administrative authority to Council oversight or face escalation." For 10 seconds there was no response. Then a voice came through, warm and cheerful like someone answering a friendly call. "Hello, Admiral Court. This is Governor Betty Frost. I appreciate you coming all this way, but I'm afraid we'll have to decline your kind offer. We're quite comfortable managing our own affairs." Prith leaned forward. Betty Frost's file showed a woman in her 60s, a retired educator who had moved to Haven 15 years ago. Not a military leader, not a politician, just a grandmother who grew prize-winning tomatoes and volunteered at the local library. "This is not a negotiation," Court replied, his voice hardening. "You have 1 hour to comply or we begin orbital bombardment of your industrial facilities." "That seems excessive," Betty said, still cheerful. "But I suppose if you insist on threats, we should probably show you why they won't work." 17 objects decloaked around Haven. They had been there the entire time, invisible to the fleet's scanners, waiting. Defense platforms, each one bristling with weapons systems that made Court's flagship look primitive by comparison. Prith watched her tactical display light up with threat indicators. Her military advisors went silent, their confident expressions evaporating. "Admiral," Betty's voice continued, now with a hint of steel beneath the warmth, "those platforms have been here for 38 years. We built them quietly, maintained them carefully, and hoped we'd never need to activate them. You've given us reason to dust them off." Court's hands moved across his console, running combat calculations. The computer gave him odds of success. 3%. The platforms outgunned his entire fleet by a factor of 10, and their positioning was perfect. Any attack would result in total fleet destruction. "You would fire on Council forces?" Court asked, his voice less certain now. "We would defend our home," Betty replied. "Same as anyone. But let me be clear, Admiral, we don't want to fight you. We don't want conflict with anyone. We just want to live our lives in peace on our terms. That's all we've ever wanted." Prith watched as Court ran more calculations, looking for any tactical advantage. There was none. The humans had turned Haven into a fortress, and they had done it so quietly that no one had noticed. "Withdraw," Prith ordered through the secure channel. "Withdraw immediately." Court didn't argue. The fleet disengaged, retreating at maximum speed while trying to maintain some dignity. But there was no dignity in this defeat. The entire operation had been broadcast on open channels. Every species in known space had watched the Council's grand military demonstration turn into humiliating withdrawal. And that night, as news of Haven's defenses spread, 3 more Council species announced their intention to withdraw from membership. But the real damage came from the follow-up reports. Intelligence agencies, finally doing the work they should have done years ago, discovered that Haven wasn't unique. Every human colony had similar defensive networks. Every human trade route had armed escorts that could outfight anything the Council could field. Humanity's civilian infrastructure was backed by military capability that had been hiding in plain sight for decades. "They were always stronger than us," Greg said quietly, reviewing the reports in Prith's office. "We just never bothered to check." "How did we miss this?" Prith asked, though she knew the answer. "We were arrogant," the Quinn observer said from the doorway. Neither Prith nor Greg had heard him enter. "You assumed human cooperation meant human weakness. You mistook their kindness for inability to resist. It's a common error among those who have never truly understood humanity." "What do you mean?" Prith asked. The Quinn moved into the room, his ancient form seeming to carry the weight of millennia. "Humans survived a death world. Their planet tried to kill them with weather, predators, disease, disaster. They survived by being adaptable, resilient, and prepared. When they joined galactic civilization, they didn't stop being those things. They just hoped they wouldn't need to prove it." "And we forced them to prove it," Greg said. "You did," the Quinn agreed. "And now you face the consequences. The economic projections show Council space entering severe recession within 3 months. Medical crises are emerging on 14 worlds. Your military capacity is degrading without human alloys and maintenance technology. And all of it because you demanded submission from those who only wanted partnership." Prith looked at the data streams flowing across her screens. The council was collapsing, not from human aggression but from human absence. They had been holding the alliance together, and no one had realized it until they let go. 6 weeks after the failed blockade of Haven, the council barely resembled its former self. What had once been a unified government of 47 species had become a fractured collection of desperate factions fighting over scraps. Prith's office received an average of 200 emergency requests per day, each one more dire than the last. Vraxis 4 is reporting a pandemic, her aide announced, voice trembling. Viral outbreak highly contagious. Their medical infrastructure cannot handle it. They need human antivirals within 48 hours or casualties will reach millions. Prith pulled up the medical reports. The virus was mutating faster than local doctors could sequence it. Human medical AI could analyze and produce targeted antivirals in hours. Council medical technology would take weeks, and by then, it would be too late. Contact the human medical fleet, Prith said quietly. They won't respond to council frequencies anymore, her aide replied. Then use diplomatic back channels, beg if you must. Across council space, the crises multiplied. Station Omega's life support systems were failing, their hybrid human-designed architecture requiring technicians with expertise no one else possessed. 3 agricultural worlds faced total crop failure without human fertilizer compounds, and their populations would be starving within months. And then there were the smaller disasters, the ones that wouldn't make headlines but would destroy lives nonetheless. A mining station where children needed a specific medication only human doctors produced. A research vessel stranded between stars, their engine requiring parts that only human manufacturers made. A colony where expectant mothers needed surgery that only human medical equipment could safely perform. Every crisis had the same solution: humanity, and humanity was no longer answering council calls. But something strange was happening. Reports filtered in of human ships arriving at disaster sites anyway. A medical vessel appearing at Vraxis 4 before any official request had been transmitted. Human engineers showing up at Station Omega with the exact parts needed. Agricultural specialists arriving at failing farms with new fertilizer shipments. How are they responding to crises they shouldn't know about? Greg asked during an emergency council session. They have intelligence networks we never detected, someone suggested. Or, the Quinn Observer said, they're monitoring council space because they still care about the people here, even if they've severed political ties. Prith received a private message later that day. No sender identification, but the signature was human. It contained a simple list of every current crisis in council space, along with estimated human response times. Someone in humanity's government was telling her that help was coming, whether the council deserved it or not. The message ended with a single line. We didn't leave because we hate you. We left because you wouldn't respect us. The political consequences came swiftly. Prith's own government initiated a no-confidence vote. She sat in the chamber as her colleagues, the same ones who had cheered her hardline stance 6 weeks ago, denounced her leadership. The Vreen High Council removed her from office with unanimous support. Her replacement was a moderate named Sylph, who immediately opened communications with the reformed council factions. Together, they composed a message to humanity, broadcast on every frequency they thought humans might monitor. To Ambassador Rachel Hayes and the human people, the message began. The Council acknowledges its errors in judgment. We sought to control what should have been partnership. We threatened what we should have respected. We apologize. For 3 days there was no response. Then Rachel Hayes appeared on public channels, broadcasting from Earth's lunar embassy. Prith watched from her now empty office, her belongings packed, her political career ended. We received the Council's message, Rachel said, her expression neutral. We appreciate the acknowledgement of past mistakes. However, apologies without changed behavior are just words. The Council must decide what kind of alliance it wants to be, one built on coercion or one built on mutual respect. We want to rebuild, Sylph responded on the live feed. We want to propose new terms, full human autonomy, no oversight, equal standing with all Council species. Rachel was quiet for a moment and Prith could see her considering. Then she shook her head. The problem wasn't just the oversight, Rachel said. The problem was the fundamental structure. You built a council that could impose sanctions, enforce compliance, demand submission. As long as that power exists, it will eventually be used against whoever seems too independent, too successful, too different. What do you propose? The Quinn observer asked, speaking for the first time in the broadcast. Rachel smiled slightly. Humanity has been discussing this with our new trade partners. We're forming something different, a voluntary cooperation network. Species join freely and leave freely. No governing body with enforcement powers. No sanctions possible. Disputes resolved through arbitration that both parties agree to in advance. That's chaos, Sylph said. Without enforcement, there's no order. Without enforcement, there's no tyranny, Rachel countered. Order comes from shared interest, not shared fear. We trade because it benefits us both. We cooperate because it makes us stronger. We help each other because it's right, not because we're forced to. Prith watched as the implications spread through the council chamber. What Rachel described wasn't a government at all. It was a network, voluntary and flexible, held together by genuine mutual benefit rather than political structure. Several of your own species have already expressed interest, Rachel continued. The Scath, the Marin, the Feln, and others. They've found that cooperation without coercion works better than mandates and sanctions. And if we want to join this network, Sylph asked carefully. You'd be welcome, Rachel said, but understand what that means. No special status, no controlling votes, no ability to force compliance from others. You participate as equals or you don't participate at all. The Quinn observer's form seemed to brighten. This is more evolved than the council ever was. I believe my people would be interested in joining. Across the galaxy, Prith knew, species were watching this broadcast and making their own calculations. The old council was dying, its authority crumbling. And in its place, something new was being born, built on human principles of cooperation without domination. She had wanted to bring humanity to heel. Instead, humanity had shown the galaxy a better way forward. 3 months after humanity left the peace talks, Rachel Hayes stood in Earth's lunar embassy, watching ships arrive and depart with steady rhythm. The view screen showed hundreds of vessels from dozens of species, all coming to discuss membership in what the media had started calling the Cooperation Network. James Wu entered with a data pad, his expression somewhere between exhausted and exhilarated. We have 17 more species requesting entry negotiations. That brings our total membership to 42, with another 23 in preliminary discussions. And the old council, Rachel asked. Down to 19 members. Sylph is doing her best, but the structure itself is failing. You can't maintain a governing body when most of your members have left for something better. Rachel nodded slowly. She felt no satisfaction in the council's collapse. There had been good people there, good intentions buried under bad assumptions. They had built something that worked for a while until it didn't. A chime announced visitors. Rachel turned to see an unexpected delegation. The Quinn observer led them, his ancient form moving with quiet dignity. Behind him came Sylph, several moderate council members, and surprisingly, even Grek, the Dravik warrior who had pushed so hard for confrontation. Ambassador Hayes, the Quinn said, bowing slightly, we request formal audience. Rachel gestured to the conference room. Of course, please come in. They settled into chairs designed to accommodate various physiologies. The Quinn spoke first. "The council has voted to dissolve," he said simply. "Effective immediately, the governmental structure that has existed for 200 years will cease operations." Rachel had expected this, but hearing it stated so plainly was still jarring. "I'm sorry it came to that." "Don't be," Sylph said. Her chitinous plates settled into a posture Rachel had learned meant resignation. "We built something that required everyone to submit to survive. You showed us something better. We should have known. Humanity has always been different." "How so?" Rachel asked. The Queen answered. "Most species joined galactic civilization after being contacted by more advanced cultures. They were taught, guided, shown the way forward. Humans discovered space travel independently. You built your own ships, developed your own technology, solved your own problems. You never needed to be governed because you already knew how to govern yourselves." Greg shifted, his massive frame uncomfortable in the smaller chair. "I pushed for the blockade of Haven. I believed humans needed to be reminded of council authority. I was wrong, and my wrongness nearly started a war we would have lost." "You withdrew before shots were fired," Rachel said. "That took wisdom." "It took fear," Greg corrected. "But fear taught me something important. Strength isn't just about weapons. It's about knowing when not to use them." Sylph pulled up a holographic display. "We've spent the past month studying your cooperation network model. It's elegant in its simplicity. No central authority means no single point of failure. Voluntary participation means everyone benefits. Arbitration instead of enforcement means conflicts get resolved instead of escalating." "It's not perfect," Rachel cautioned. "There will be problems. Species that abuse the system, disputes that can't be easily resolved, bad actors who need to be excluded." "But those problems get handled by the members themselves," the Queen said, "not by a central government that might be corrupt or incompetent or simply wrong. The network distributes both power and responsibility." "Which is why we're here," Sylph said. "The former council species want to join, not as a block but individually. Each species negotiating its own entry terms, establishing its own relationships, contributing its own strengths." Rachel considered this carefully. "You understand what you're asking. You'd be giving up any special status you had. The Vreen would have the same standing as any other member. No more, no less." "We understand," Sylph said. "And we accept. The Council tried to rule the galaxy. Your network simply wants to connect it. That's a better goal." Over the next several weeks, the transition happened faster than anyone expected. Former council species applied for network membership, going through the same process as everyone else. Some were accepted immediately. Others needed to make changes to their internal policies first, particularly around freedom of movement and trade. The Dravik military, once a council enforcement arm, became a security cooperative. Instead of imposing council will, they offered protection services to any network member who requested it, paid through voluntary contributions. The Vreen medical establishment, freed from council bureaucracy, began sharing research with human hospitals. Together, they developed treatments that neither species could have created alone. The Shard mathematicians started collaborating with human programmers. Their different approaches to logic creating computational systems that revolutionized data processing. Everywhere Rachel looked, cooperation bloomed. Not because anyone was forced to work together, but because working together produced better results than isolation. She received a message one evening from an unexpected source. Prith, the former counselor whose ambitions had triggered this entire crisis, had taken a position as a cultural liaison on a mixed-species station. Her message was brief. "I wanted to control humanity because I was afraid of you. Your technology, your adaptability, your independence. I thought if we didn't govern you, you would govern us. I never considered the third option, that we could simply be partners, neither governing nor governed. Thank you for teaching us that lesson, even though we resisted learning it." Rachel didn't reply immediately. She walked to the viewport and looked down at Earth, the blue-green world that had spawned a species too stubborn to submit and too compassionate to dominate. A medical ship was departing, heading for Vraxis 4. The pandemic there had been contained with human help, and now human doctors were staying to train local physicians in advanced techniques. Not because they were required to, but because people had needed help and humans had been able to provide it. That was the real difference, Rachel thought. The Council had seen the galaxy as something to govern. Humanity saw it as something to belong to, not above others but among them. She composed her response to Prith. "Partners it is, welcome to the network." Outside, the stars shone bright and the ships flew free, carrying people and goods and ideas across space that no longer belonged to any council or government or empire. It belonged to everyone who chose to participate, to cooperate, to build together. And in the end, that had always been humanity's real strength, not their weapons or technology or even their adaptability. It was their stubborn insistence that freedom and cooperation weren't opposites, but partners in creating something better than either could build alone.